last and most important thing that I put out there is deliverability. And not just deliverability, but for both email and SMS and WhatsApp and all the things that I see you talking about. Things are coming right now, guys. And we talk about deliverability, right? Email and SMS deliverability challenges. Here are the three things. Number one, the spam box. We all know the spam box in email. There's a spam box, a junk box in SMS now showing up. It's appearing. It's going to become a bigger thing. I've got a whole topic on that in just a second here. We've got the inbox versus promotional box. Now, this is something that I will be talking a lot more about into the future, but inbox and promotional box is something that I think is really interesting, the way that people perceive the value of the two as well. And then the last challenge that a lot of people are going to challenge is over messaging, because you don't have your email and SMS into one product. So you have over messaging happening. I don't care how great the integration is. They miss the mark often with this stuff. So over messaging will be a deliverability challenge, because I already saw it. If you message too many times in a week, people do unsubscribe just as much too. And you don't want to lose them. You're not looking for 5, 10, 8% unsubscribe rates on your SMS. That just means that, well, you're over messaging people, right? So here's the way that I thought about deliverability was I'm going to give you 2 things: 10 tips on your email and 5 tips on your SMS. So I'm going to tell you how to deliver your stuff better. So the number one rule that I talk about deliverability of email is test, and test a lot and often. I'm not talking about testing how it looks. I'm talking about testing for inbox placement. I'm talking about creating a ton of inboxes. I always give the rule of thumb. You should look at your inbox. Let's say you have let's just pretend you have 100%, right? Look at your inbox and say, what percentage of my current database is Gmail? 50%, 70%? That's usually typically right. 50 to 70%. Let's just say 50%, right? So you need to create 50%. Then you might have 20% Yahoo, 20% AOL, and 10% Microsoft, right? We'll just use those numbers to keep it easy. You should go off and create 10 seed inboxes. Things like a Gmail, 5 Gmails, 2 Yahoos, 2 AOLs, and 1 Microsoft. And those become your seed inboxes. Do not rely on those tools like Glock apps or on some of these other tools that are out there for testing, because they're all using the same behavioral box. And unfortunately, they start leaning on the reputation of IP and not the sender anymore. And that's kind of part of the problem with those tools. So you need to create your own test environment. It's absolutely free. It's a little tedious, but throw them in the inbox. Don't engage with them. Just make sure they land in the tab or the place that you want them to land. Second, clear sender names and emails. That's pretty obvious. Make sure that you're identifying yourself and the email is very clear what brand you're coming from. But secondly, to deepen it, authenticate yourself. Authenticate yourself. And what that means is very much to make sure that the ISP, the internet service provider receiving your email, understands that the email is coming from someone who said, yes, we've securely handshaked with the domain owner, and they said, yes, this is an email based on their behalf. Please authenticate yourself. Gmail is getting really tight about this right now. I've got a whole talk about this actually, but authentication is super important. Subject line and pre-header lines. Thinking about these are really important. People don't realize that subject lines and pre-header messages can be part of why it creates your spam or your delivery doesn't happen or you're not going to engage, right? First, having engaging subject lines and pre-header is important, but also not being too spammy at the same time and not putting too many things like this, right? I put this out here because, well, emojis and characters. I want you guys to think about something really, really important when you think about spam filters, okay? Spam filters are computers. What do you think a spam filter sees when they see an emoji of an alarm clock? I'm sure everyone thinks, oh, maybe it's just an alarm clock at some point, but it's actually a group of characters. It's actually a group of characters that are put in there. It looks kind of like this exclamation point and these and ambers at Y. That makes up one of these cool emojis, right? Those emojis are showing up on the AI of the computer that checked your spam complaint, and they're looking at it as a bunch of characters. What do they think that those characters are? Well, those characters must be spam. Don't use more than one. Don't use more than one emoji in a subject line or pre-header. I'm just giving you a simple baseline. You can do more. I'm not saying you can't, but you start encroaching on different things. I see some of the biggest brands out there, some large companies out there that abuse emojis, and they're always in my spam box for some reason. There's probably a reason for that. Go look in your spam box. You'll notice that most of your stuff highlighted and emojis are number one reasons why things are in your spam box. So just be careful there. All right. Body of the email. God, the content of the email, the links, the clicks, the images, all the things that come into the body of the email. Well, you got to be mindful there. And what I'm talking about is things like imagery and too many images, right? I think I have a little slide on this on the 40% thing, but making sure there's a good clean body. The links, they go where they're supposed to go, to your website, through your website link. So if your website is jimmy.com, every link should be jimmy.com and / whatever. Even your social media, if you can, you should put it through jimmy.com / Facebook. That does a redirect, for example, right? Getting your links tight are really important deliverability points. The 40% text to images minimum. All right, look, there was a time where imagery and putting a bunch of images because you wanted a certain font and a certain color and look and sending emails that way was a good practice. Well, the way that the world is changing right now, it's starting to become a bad practice. I'm going to go back to that emoji lesson we just had. What do you think an AI sees when they see a bunch of images, right? When they see a bunch of images on your email and no text? Well, they take those images and they score them. God, if you use stock images, they're going to say, holy cow, this image has been used everywhere. If you use new custom images, I've never seen this image. They must not be trustworthy. All you're basically doing is either way. But what text does is helps alleviate those points for the spam filter looking at it. So I always say the 40% text to image rule. I've proved it over and over. I just worked with a client recently and I said, just trust me, put 40% text to image. And I promise you, I wouldn't tell you to put all this extra work in for no reason. And their open rates went up, their click rates went up, and their revenue went up. So think about that. All right. Active and inactive data. This is pretty self-explanatory. Don't mail old data. Old data after a certain couple years, unless you have an exact strategy, it's dead. I know that it sounds crazy that you might lose people, you might lose engagers, you might lose subscribers. But the reality is, well, they're inactive for a reason because they didn't want to engage with your brand. If they wanted to engage with your brand, they would have engaged with your brand. And it's okay to let people go. It's okay. The only reason you even know they exist is because they give you an email address or made a purchase. But if you think about a retail storefront, a lot of people aren't repeat purchases. They're one-time purchases and they move on, right? You guys know your repeat purchase rate. Think about that data. You should think about that congruently to your subscriber list. You have a 30% repeat buying rate, then you're going to lose. You're only have 30% of your audience that's probably going to buy again. And those inactive people probably aren't going to come back, right? Spam trigger words, free, guaranteed, lifetime, weight loss. There's all these spam trigger words out there. Not saying don't use them. I know it's important to use them, free shipping, free this, that, but just don't over abuse it. There is a level of over abuse when it comes to these things. So think about that and make sure you have a clear footer with unsubscribe. Like I know this sounds silly, but I see this way too often where people don't have a clear footer. They use the wrong colors. They don't look very well. You can't see it. They have a hidden tab. They have a hidden word. They tell you to do things. Just make sure your clear footer is unsubscribe. And unsubscribe is relatively easy to do as well too, right? So there's email.